First, you have to know what happens when an atomic bomb explodes. There is a bright flash, brighter than the sun, brighter than anything you've ever seen. It is such a big explosion, it can smash in buildings and knock signboards over and break windows all over town. But if you duck and cover like Bert, you will be much safer.
Welcome folks, I'm Livvvid. Developed by Bethesda Game Studios and released in October of 2008, Fallout 3 was Bethesda's first Fallout game. The Fallout series was originally created by Interplay Entertainment in the 90s, with Fallout 1 and 2 having isometric graphics and a turn-based combat system. They were and are beloved games with a very passionate fan base. But in 2004, Bethesda acquired a license to make a Fallout game, and in 2007, they outright purchased the Fallout IP from Interplay. This gave Bethesda ownership over Fallout, past, present, and future. Many of the fans of Fallout 1 and 2 saw Fallout 3 as a huge betrayal to the series. That's because Fallout 3 transitioned the series from the previous 2D isometric view to a fully 3D engine with real-time combat in a first or third-person perspective. But for people who are like me, Fallout 3 was our introduction to the series. Back in 2008, I was around 16 years old and I had never even heard about Fallout 1 or 2. The first time I heard about Fallout 3 was from my brother telling me about it after he read a Game Informer magazine about its development. I had played Elder Scrolls Morrowind and I loved it. So when he told me the same studio was going to make this post-apocalyptic game, I was really excited. A world where you traverse a wasteland with a bunch of skills, finding weapons, and loot. It didn't sound like any game I had ever played at the time, but I desperately wanted to. In November of 2008, my brothers and I went to a family friend's house for Thanksgiving and brought our 360. Me and my two brothers played Fallout 3 non-stop, going off in different directions with our own save files and taking turns exploring the capital wasteland. Fallout 3 is my favorite game back then, and it stayed that way until a few years later when I had to deliver a certain platinum chip in a different game. In today's video, I'm going to be going back and replaying Fallout 3 and its DLCs. I'll talk about settlements and concepts roughly in the order I encounter them or when they feel natural. I do this to keep a nice flow for myself as I write the script. This video will be full of spoilers, so you've been warned. It's important to be clear about what you're about to watch. My bias coming in is that I loved this game upon release, and I still enjoy it today. That does not mean I won't have criticisms. In fact, I'll have plenty. I want the viewer to know up front that I'll be speaking about my criticisms of the game in addition to the things I like about it. I'm a believer that you can criticize the things you love. If you do end up liking this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I would love to bring you more Fallout content in the future, and that is the absolute best way to help bring more Fallout content from me. I appreciate you for clicking on the video, now let's get started. The game opens up with a cinematic narrated by Ron Perlman. He's the iconic voice of the series going way back to the very beginning. The world of Fallout deviates from our own history around the 40s or 50s. Semiconductors and transistors, widely used in our own technology today, never became widespread. The Fallout universe tech stuck with vacuum tubes, atomic energy, and robotics rather than microelectronics and digital computing that we use. Even culture stayed static to a stereotypical 1950s Americana look. You know, apple pie and polka dot dresses. It's a world that had plenty of impressive advances, but it wasn't without its problems. As time went on, the nations of the world began to run out of resources and wars broke out, ultimately culminating in mutually assured destruction in 2077 through atomic fire. This opening does a good job of giving new and old Fallout players a taste of what the world is all about. Yeah, that's one way to start a game. You're met by your father James, voice acted by Liam Neeson. Bethesda was really keen to have recognizable voice actors in their games in this era, with Patrick Stewart and Sean Bean performing in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion just a few years prior. Your dad has a device that gives a glimpse into what your adult self will look like in the future. The character creation segment isn't exactly robust, but it gives you enough options for what the game is. Most people will play this game in first person, so you will rarely see your own character, but the option to play in third person is also there too. After finishing character creation, your mother goes into a medical emergency and will pass away. The next phase of life begins in Vault 101. Vaults are what kept many people safe when the bombs dropped. But the company behind them, Vault Tech, may have some other ideas about what vaults actually should be doing. More on that later. Your journey in the vault will be snippets of different points in your life. What I love about this sequence of the game is how it entwines tutorial aspects with the environment around you in a sensible way. As a baby, you find this special book that looks a lot like a picture book for babies. It'll explain your primary character points: strength, perception, endurance, charisma, intelligence, agility, and luck. You get 5 points to put in whatever you want, but you can also reduce points to certain stats that you don't plan on using and put them into others. I did multiple playthroughs for the making of this video, so you'll see a mix of footage between my melee character and a small guns character. For your 10th birthday, you get to meet the other people in the vault, like Amada, the Overseer's daughter. Overseers are the leaders of the vault, dictating how the vault is run. And look, Amada appears to have that Bethesda charm going on with her party hat at the moment. Bugs, graphical issues, and crashes come par for the course with Bethesda games. It's not about if you'll experience bugs and crashes, but when. They can be annoying or take you out of the experience at times, but usually people forgive it. Especially back in 2008, because these were uniquely huge games for their time, and I think people just waved it off. Reloading a save or leaving an area and coming back can remedy most situations. Although soft locks and crashes still do happen, and it should be noted. Even getting this era of Bethesda games to run can be a chore because they kind of abandon these games to time. I'm not saying give us new DLCs decades later, but at least try to have these games starting on modern builds later in their life. This party also introduces you to optional dialogue for the first time. It's also important for persuading characters to change their stance on something, or provide more caps for completing a quest than initially offered. Bottle caps are the game's post-war currency. The birthday is also important for learning more about the different people and roles of the vault. Much of the game's context and lore is dependent on if you're digging into the dialogue options or computers to find out more. Some dialogue options are tied to the speech skill. In Fallout 3, it's a percentage chance at success, which you can cheese by reloading saves. If the results are tied to chance, you aren't really rewarding the players who are putting points into certain stats, and it reduces the value of having high charisma or speech. The big birthday gift at your party is the Pip-Boy, this nifty gizmo attached to your arm that will be very important going forward. It has important information about your status, quests, a radio, and most importantly, how you manage and equip your items. The gift giving isn't over yet though. Your father's assistant Jonas is down in the basement ready to help showcase your new gift, a BB gun. This is the first time you'll hold a weapon in your hand, and you'll likely notice the first person perspective with a weapon is pretty restrictive in Fallout 3. You only get a slight zoom in rather than an actual aiming down of your scope. This looks and feels abnormal, and it takes some time getting used to it. Killing this random rad roach will reward you with XP, indicating to a player that killing enemies is the way to earn it. In the next phase of life, you're 16 years old. You're in your father's office about to take a very important exam. Just on his desk is a bobblehead. These are unique and very important items in the game. They will permanently increase a stat or skill. This gives the player another thing to be on the lookout for later, encouraging exploration and scavenging. On your way to the very important exam, you run into Amada dealing with the tunnel snakes, a rabble of ruffians from the vault. You want to help your friend, and there are various ways to get them to go away. You can fight them or just talk it out. Another method is using the important speech skill. Depending on how you deal with them, you may get your first instance of karma. There is good and bad karma within Fallout 3 to track how you're treating people in the game. Certain companion characters in the world will interact with you differently depending on it. Some people will choose to associate or not associate with you based on your karma rating in a particular direction. A radio station on your Pip-Boy may also track your good and bad actions. Karma in Fallout 3 feels pretty shallow. There just aren't that many instances where it matters. There are characters who may or may not join you based on it, a few level up choices matter based on your karma, and the general disposition of a handful of characters you'll talk to. You can be neutral too, but it's sometimes difficult to perfectly balance decisions to keep neutrality. Like in the main story, there's just times where you get good karma for doing what you already have to do for the main story. After dealing with the tunnel snakes, you get to take your G.O.A.T exam. It's a series of 10 scenarios where you answer honestly, of course. The scenarios are pretty funny and display the lighthearted humor of the game. Fallout has always had a balance with humor and seriousness. Your future role in the vault will be determined from these answers. There are 13 skills that give you a boost for the gameplay to come. The G.O.A.T results will recommend 3 tag skills, but you can also change them around right now or a little bit later. All of them have a little description, but some you may not know how good or bad they are in application because you haven't been able to use them yet. There are various ways to be proficient at certain forms of combat. Small guns are your traditional weapons like pistols and assault rifles. Very good early game and abundant outside the vault. Energy weapons are usually stronger, with the trade-off being that they're less abundant and more expensive. There is melee, unarmed, explosives, and more to give you different ways to fight. Then there are less violent skills like lockpicking, hacking, medicine, and barter. The next phase of life starts with a bang. Amada wakes you up to the vault in total chaos. Sirens are blaring and she frantically tells you about how your father just left the vault and that Jonas has been killed by the Overseer's security. She tells you that you're next on the list and you have to run away, giving you a real gun to protect yourself. This is the first time you're given pretty much free reign over the entire vault. It's exciting but also scary. There is also a rad roach infestation going on with the vault security already trying to kill you. It's during these fights you're going to get really used to using VATS. It stands for Vault Tech Assisted Targeting System. Clicking on VATS will pause the game and give you a statistical breakdown of your enemies. You can select their limbs, center mass, head, and even their weapons to disarm them. Your action points at the bottom right determine how many times you can hit or shoot in this sequence. A hands-off animation will play showing the results of your attempts. Sometimes the attacks will cripple their limbs or even make them explode in a bloody mess. You get these critical shots where it zooms in on you and follows the bullet leaving the gun. It's kind of like a turn-based combat system. This is where the game's controversial combat design comes into question though. If you're like me and you like VATS, great. But even people like me can get annoyed when you're trying to shoot outside of VATS. You will wildly miss when shooting if your skill for that category of weapon is too low. That's because the game is factoring in many different stats into every single shot with dice rolls, both in VATS and in real-time combat. These dice rolls are considering your skill with the weapon, the agility trait, and the weapon condition as well. You need to maintain your weapons because they will deteriorate with more usage. The reason it works like this is likely due to Bethesda wanting to remain true to the RPG aspects of Fallout 1 and 2. If these stats are collectively low, your shots will go off in crazy directions despite aiming accurately. And I feel like I understand their dilemma here. If you're amazing at first-person shooters, why would you need to put points into becoming more accurate? However, it can be frustrating when you're out of action points and trying to shoot from a decent range and bullets are flying off in different directions, which causes a reliance on VATS in critical situations. I think you'll love or hate combat in Fallout 3 depending on your feelings on VATS. And I must confess I like the gimmick interactions with the slow bullet time. If you get creative with shooting limbs or the grenades of enemies when they're about to throw them at you, you may really enjoy using it. But you'll also miss in VATS, and if you just want to play it like a normal shooter without VATS, the combat can be frustrating. It feels like Bethesda was struggling to find the balance of wanting to honor the series' turn-based RPG elements with the real-time structure from the Elder Scrolls games they had been making at this time. The result can feel clunky and even aggravating. You may also find your first instance of lockpicking in the vault. It's a minigame using bobby pins in order to find the sweet spot of a lock to open it up. Hacking is something you'll discover later, which is the Smarty Pants version of lockpicking. It's a minigame where you have to find the password in 4 attempts. You'll be given a lot of words, and when you attempt to click on them, if it's not the passcode, it'll say how close you were. You can also find anomalous brackets that will either remove a dud answer or replenish your attempts. It's not that hard to grasp or perform, but it makes you feel like a cool hacker. Like the kind out of 90s movies where the hacking involved doesn't really make sense, but it looks cool. After battling through vault security, you can choose to kill or spare the Overseer, and then enter his control room. On his terminal, you'll find all sorts of truths about the residents of the vault, as well as hints on what lies just outside the vault. This is one of those examples of your curiosity rewarding you. I never used to read these entries as a teenager, but now I really like reading them. You get to learn a lot of cool stuff about the residents and lore itself. Just as you find the exit and you're about to escape, you get one last chance to change pretty much everything about your character. I like that you get this one last opportunity to change things, because by this point you have more information on what skills you want to use now. The game will also make an autosave for you here so you don't have to replay the vault sequence later if you want to start again. Just before we leave, I want to reiterate how good of a sequence I think the Vault 101 experience is. It's a really interesting way to introduce players of the game, but also teach you a lot of different concepts. Whenever I replay, I actually enjoy playing through the vault opening. When we're finally ready, it's time to leave the vault. Leaving the vault for the first time was a huge moment for me when I first played this back in 2008, and it still has an effect on me even now. The way you can barely see because the blinding rays of the sun are too powerful for your subterranean eyes. Getting a glimpse of the wide open expanse of the capital Wasteland. Fallout 3 is based in what remains of the District of Columbia metropolitan area, the capital of the former United States of America. Just outside of Vault 101, you're in the outskirts of that capital city. You can see the ruins of DC and its monuments like the Washington Memorial and House of Congress. The destroyed town of Springvale is just below you. The landscape is ugly and brown with nothing green growing anywhere. The dark gray and crimson of the twisted steel mixed in make Fallout 3's open map feel like a rusty tin can. I love it. From the moment you leave the vault, you're allowed to go wherever and do whatever the hell you want. There's dangerous levels of radiation everywhere, enemies, interesting settlements, and the ruins of the former world to scavenge. The way the Fallout world developed much differently from our own also makes you wonder what kind of lives these people lived. Since Fallout isn't based on our own timeline and history after the 1940s, you don't just assume how life was for people back in 2077. The urge to explore and find more about this world and what happened to it is addicting. All of that is why it's an incredibly exciting prospect and what people who love these games crave. However, there is an issue that I feel creeps into my mind almost immediately. Where is my dad? The story of Fallout 3 is the hunt for your father James, and the subsequent missions aiding him in restoring clean drinking water to the irradiated wasteland. But you aren't sure if he's safe. The way that you're woken up at the vault and have to fight your way out, the hostile enemies all throughout the wasteland, that would likely indicate to you that he may be in trouble. This unfortunately conflicts with a game design that is constantly encouraging you to go off in any directions and do anything you want. It's hard to separation the urgency that the only family member you have left may be in danger, but you just want to go exploring. I know this type of stuff doesn't bother some people at all. When I've talked about this game with friends or people online, some balk at the idea that you would even consider these things and not just play the game. If you're like that, I envy you. It would allow me to just play the game and not have that thought in the back of my mind. But this is a role-playing game. The story is there for a reason. If I'm meant to ignore the story, why is it there? I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but this seems to be a direct problem of storytelling within Bethesda. In Fallout 4, it's not your adult father who is missing, it's your infant son. The problem is much worse than that game, admittedly. Then you take Fallout New Vegas, which was developed by Obsidian, and they immediately remedy that by making the opening sequence of the story entirely about you. No missing family you may need to help. You're shot in the head, and you don't need to justify anything to anyone, or feel guilty for doing anything because whatever you want to do is solely on you. It's a plot directed and driven by the player. In New Vegas, when you want to eventually interact with the main story, it slowly builds and starts making sense that there would be a climax that you're okay with focusing on by that point. As I mentioned, this isn't as bad as it would be in Fallout 4 when you are the parent of a missing infant child. Because James is a grown man and your dad, there isn't a sense of dependency he'd have on you, and he left the vault willingly. The way I interact with this dilemma is I just put off the main story. I'm going to explore the world and grow as a character, and I will eventually interact with the main story when I'm ready. Liam Neeson can handle himself in this reverse Taken situation. That's also how the rest of this video will be structured going forward. I'm going to focus on some but not all of the side missions and settlements of the capital Wasteland. After I talk about the most interesting topics to me, I'll return to the main story. Soon after you leave the vault, you'll experience your first level up. You choose skill points to add to your 13 skills. Then you get to choose a perk. Perks are special abilities or bonuses that you can choose for your character as you level up. They're a core part of how you customize your build and playstyle. There is the Pyromaniac perk that increases your damage based on fire weapons. Finesse gives you 5% to critical chance. Action Boy or Girl gives you more AP during VATS. This is where you're really diversifying your character to your playstyle. The base game of Fallout 3 has a decent amount of perks, but with all the DLCs added, it has a lot more to work with. And I think they're definitely needed as the base game feels really thin without them. There are also perks that straight up give you more points into skills, which I personally don't take because I figure I'll just add those skill points on level up, and that they don't offer something unique to my character. Perks are what make leveling up in Fallout really exciting. One of the first important settlements the player will encounter is Megaton. It's a jumbled mess of twisted steel shacks built on top of each other from the ruins of a downed aircraft. It also had the payload of an entire nuclear bomb, which is at the center of the settlement. Although you can go wherever you want, the main mission and even the design just after you leave the vault is urging you to go to Megaton. It's probably best to follow the crumb trails if you're a new player, because Megaton is a great settlement to teach a player more about the world of Fallout 3. The law of the town is Lucas Sims, a gun-toting sheriff that will give respect if it's earned, and he doesn't appreciate if you act rude. I'm willing to respect the man in his town, but he does have a bobblehead of strength in his house, and I am going to go steal it. It's got plenty of places to trade and rest up after encountering hostilities in the Wasteland. The people are just as curious about you as you are about them. A real living and breathing vault dweller is not very common. The Church of Adam is one of the first religions or belief systems you'll see in the game. I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what they believe in, but it seems like a death cult. Cratoside Supply is ran by Moira Brown. She's a type of general goods trader. And from things I've seen online, people do not seem to like her. She's got a very unique voice.
Hey, I hear you're that stray from the vault. I haven't seen one of you for years.
And she's always got a positive attitude, even if you later do something very bad to Megaton. Moira Brown isn't so bad, I like her in fact. I use her consistently when I play as my go-to merchant for offloading goods for my travels. She's also an excellent source for the side missions in this game. You've learned how to live in the vault, but you need to learn how to live on the outside. She is trying to make a book called The Wasteland Survival Guide for someone in our unique situation. You'll act as her guinea pig so the others don't have to suffer the same trials you are going through. Moira will continue feeding quests to you that expand the different gameplay elements to you as a player, and showcasing how side quests work. You'll deal with radiation, testing experimental equipment, and the most dangerous of all, reading. Her quests will also have optional components to them, usually doing a little bit extra, like taking on 600 rads rather than her initial request of 200 for her research on the effects of rad poisoning. This will often lead to some kind of monetary bonus or sometimes a permanent perk that you can only get through her, so I highly recommend doing the little bit extra. You can also just lie about everything too, and she will believe you, but you miss out on rewards and perks. If you do her super duper mark quest, it shows you the addictive aspect of this game, scavenging. All around the Wasteland are caves, ruins, settlements, and military bases. And it's full of things to collect and add to your arsenal. The super duper mark quest for Moira guides you through the process of finding medical supplies, food to heal yourself, weapons and ammunition, and more. This is the gameplay loop that I find really addicting. You want to explore all the interesting ruins, but in order to do that, you need to scavenge to keep up your scarce ammo and medical supplies stocked. Then you need to repair your equipment, but you need caps for that, so you have to sell scavenged supplies, and so on. I've played this game for 15 years, and I still find new things and buildings I've searched dozens of times. It could be something as simple as a stim pack to heal myself, or a new gun I want to use. And the grandest reward of all is of course a unique item or a bobblehead. This loop is so satisfying that any criticisms you've heard or will hear aren't enough to make me ever want to stop playing this game. Moira is like a new player's mentor to the game. And by mentor I mean she throws you into the fire and you have to teach yourself how to navigate through the wasteland in dangerous situations. But still, she's sending you to these places and situations for really good rewards and experience. Moriarty's bar will push the story and other side quests along. You'll meet Mr. Burke, who is a shady figure trying to blow up the big atomic bomb for his boss, Mr. Tenpenny. You can rig the bomb to explode and literally blow up the whole town. Obviously, this will give you a ridiculous amount of negative karma, but you will be rewarded with a player home over at Tenpenny Tower where Burke's boss lives. If you choose to defuse the bomb in Megaton, you'll be rewarded with a player home, which really solidifies Megaton as the player's hub throughout the game. Although I appreciate this level of choice and consequences of your actions, I don't really play the super evil bad guy way in any games that are structured like this. I don't want to see it not available to others, I'm just talking about my playstyle. Playing as a goody two-shoes isn't really me either, but I would rather lean into that direction than the mustache-twirling evil that some of these options give you. So what I'm trying to say is Megaton gets spared whenever I play. G.O.A.T is one of the first ghouls you may see. Most ghouls are from pre-war times, the radiation giving them a strange, incredible side effect to allow them to have long life, but also causing their skin to fall off. If you're nice to G.O.A.T, he'll give you a discount and some good karma. Moriarty is, of course, ran by Colin Moriarty. He's got an Irish accent, don't ask me how, and is one of the first cogs in pushing along the main story. He's known your father for years and even recognizes you. Although that couldn't be possible because we're from the vault and we've never left. You can figure out where your dad is from this bar in various different ways. Dialogue, completing a side quest, or just hacking his computer. But as I said, I'm putting all that aside for now to explore and do side quests. With all the lessons learned from Megaton, you can venture beyond to find more settlements and side quests. The capital Wasteland has a wide range of enemies eager to kill you. On the less dangerous side are mole rats. Pretty easy to kill, but not too strong. Raiders are a step up. A rabble of humans who don't negotiate with anyone and will shoot you on sight. Although fighting them will help you replenish your ammo if you're using weapons in the small guns category. There's leaderless military robots aimlessly wandering around the countryside with their very powerful energy-based weapons. Robo-brains can shatter your mind and obscure your vision when you're fighting them. The Mr. Gutsies terrify me because their laser beams hurt like hell. All variants of these machines will have different electrical components you can use and sell, and they have ammunition for energy weapons too. I love the idea that these things have likely been around since the day the bombs dropped, and their programming has probably become so corrupted that they can't be controlled anymore, just endlessly patrolling the countryside. Rad scorpions are really scary. They hit hard with poisonous attacks, and I swear they're made from titanium or something because you'll unload tons of ammo on them due to their high armor stat. Yaoguais are terrifying mutated bears, which should sound crazy enough with that description alone. Deathclaws are the terror of all the Wasteland. I don't even know what these things are or were supposed to be, but they look like demons and have elongated limbs and horns. When fighting animals, you can also exploit their lack of range attacks and need to physically hit you by bobbing or weaving or walking backwards. For rad scorpions specifically, you can just circle them or bait them into trying to attack you and back away at the last second. And of course there's the unbeatable elevated rock technique where you get chased by an animal or something and you just stand on top of the rock shooting them. I like the wide range of enemies in Fallout 3, but it's time to talk about level scaling. Bethesda has been doing the level scaling system for a while now. It's the idea that as you level up and build your character, the enemies will grow and become stronger with you. Typical raiders are replaced by even stronger ranks of them. Mole rat spawns become Yaoguai spawns. Yaoguai spawns become Deathclaw spawns, and so on. This ends up souring the joy of the RPG aspects of this game. The issue isn't that you encounter tough enemies. You want to be challenged to keep the gameplay fun and engaging. It's that most of the world around you will react to you specifically. Rather than having portions of the map with highly dangerous enemies that you should avoid and confront later when you're more powerful, the places you've already been to eventually respawn enemies and they're much stronger than they were before. Even a straight up normal raider, not even a higher rank one, will start shredding your health with a single burst from an assault rifle. Once manageable enemies start tearing you apart, which causes you to use more stim packs and repair your armor. And they get stat buffs to their health and armor, so you're pouring caps into buying ammo because you ran out of ammo that you scavenged. And it's not like the enemies get tactically better either. They all behave the same. The game is not impossible once this happens, but it certainly gets annoying. Your scavenging journey will be made a bit more cozy with some music. Your Pip-Boy can take in radio broadcasts that pick up signals that you can listen to while you're playing. Galaxy News Radio is the Wasteland's up-to-date news source. Their signal is weak though and can be improved the closer you get to their HQ in DC, and eventually will be crystal clear when you help GNR repair their equipment. They play tons of old world songs from the 30s all the way through the 60s. I love the music, even during gameplay. The songs are pretty timeless and catchy. However, they will eventually wear on you because the setlist isn't exactly huge. There are only 20 licensed songs for GNR Radio. But I swear there's more weight added on certain songs to play more often than others. Because I swear I hear Butcher Pete 10 times more than any other song.
You get whacked, chopping at me.
But if you don't like it, you can also just turn it off. The original soundtrack to Fallout 3 has that spooky and haunting ambient vibe to it that the first games have. 3Dog, the radio station host of GNR, will also periodically interrupt the music to speak on world events. Sometimes he mentions general things about the world, where potential quests might be, but he will also speak about your accomplishments throughout the gameplay, even giving his opinion based on the actions you take. The other main radio station is the Enclave Radio. The Enclave is a mysterious group comprised of the former government of the United States and holder of its most important secrets and military assets. Its host is John Henry Eden, the leader of the Enclave and self-proclaimed President of the United States of America. I still remember what it was like not knowing anything about this game or what the Enclave was talking about. Without knowing any of the context, he insists that the Enclave exists and will return in force to take back control of the capital Wasteland. He's playing patriotic music and talking about bringing back the America before the bombs dropped. One of my favorite talking points is about how he wants to bring back baseball, the American pastime. Whether intended by Bethesda or not, I also remember when I first played the game, I wasn't sure if this was just looping stuff from a crazy person. Without having played Fallout 2, I didn't realize what the Enclave even was, so I wasn't sure what any of this meant. President Eden doesn't make nearly as many updates as 3Dog on GNR Radio, so I began to think that maybe it was pre-recordings and that maybe the person talking wasn't alive anymore. I wasn't sure. For now, I'll leave that answer and the Enclave itself for later in the video. In your travels through the Wasteland, you'll be able to have companions that tag along with you. These are NPCs that you can convince or force to travel with you. In Fallout 3, companions are pretty shallow in terms of what they offer, outside of sometimes soaking up and contributing damage. There's only a few ways to control them, and there is no development on a bond between them. Megaton has Jericho, who wants to play with a character that has evil alignment, but if not him, many players' first companions might be dog meat. He's just a loyal junkyard dog. He also doesn't count as a human companion, and therefore you can have him in addition to a humanoid character like Jericho or Paladin Cross. During gunfights themselves, they can get in the way as friendly fire does exist. The companions have a really bad habit of sitting in front of entrances and exits when you're trying to get through them. Companions can also permanently die in Fallout 3, which I hate. Yeah, I know it's not realistic, but since they can be so clumsy and downright dumb, it becomes annoying trying to keep them alive all the time. I'll trade realism on this one. I'll take them going unconscious like the other games do it. Companions aren't really necessary for the game though, so you're fine. There are many factions in Fallout 3 with varying degrees of interactions and story-based implications. The Raiders are technically a faction and hostile to anyone and anything that isn't them. The Talon Company is similar to the Raiders, but they're a huge military-like mercenary group that hunts down people in the Wasteland who they've been contracted to kill. They'll appear as random encounters trying to kill the player if you're a little goody two-shoes with good karma. But they also occupy different facilities and military bases, and they even get into the thick of the fighting in downtown DC. In my own experience, the random events where they hunt you down can get a bit repetitive and even predictable at times. Because I've played this game enough to consciously think, well, I have good karma and they always ambush me right here when I leave this building, and sure enough, they show up. For more important factions, there are the super mutants. Similar to the Raiders, they can't be reasoned with and attack anything that isn't them. They are formerly human, but have been turned into death machines infected with the FEV, or Forced Evolutionary Virus. The FEV has been a thing since the original Fallout games, and which heavily leaned on it as a plot. In Fallout 3, the super mutants are pretty much what every other faction is terrified of, and everybody is wondering where the hell they're coming from because they can't breed. That answer will be revealed later in the main story though. Every faction in this game gets their ass handed to them by the super mutants, but there is one hope for the Wasteland: the Brotherhood of Steel. They come from way back out west and have been around since the original Fallout games. They have really cool power armor, iconic for the series, and are obsessed with collecting and preserving pre-war technology. Traditionally, they do not commingle with Wastelanders or other factions beyond the pursuit of technology. They won't attack non-violent enemies, but they also don't want much to do with anybody else either. But in Fallout 3, you get a different take on them. Led by Elder Lions, they were initially sent to the capital Wasteland for the stated purpose of collecting technology and bringing it back to the West Coast. However, the expedition didn't exactly go according to plan, and they ended up staying permanently, and deciding to help the capital Wasteland by defending its inhabitants from the super mutant onslaught. They will be crucial to the story of this game, and I'll get into them much more during the story segment. Not everybody was happy about this betrayal to the core values though. The Brotherhood outcasts, distinguished by their painted red and black armor, rejected the heresy of Lions, getting soft and sympathizing with the locals. They don't have the means to walk across the wasteland back to the west, so they instead broke off from Lions and created a faction of their own and were called the Outcasts. Outcast patrols will dot the rural areas of the wasteland as they search for technology. You cannot join them in any capacity, and hey, I respect it. I remember wishing I could join them when I first started playing this game and would read the forums back in the day to see if it was possible. And I would be really bummed when I realized I couldn't. But now I see Bethesda had to do that to respect their own lore. It wouldn't make sense for them to do this breakaway from Elder Lions and then start accepting locals into their ranks, essentially what Lions is doing. There isn't too much going on with them story-wise outside of bringing them technology in exchange for traditional supplies they don't mind giving you. However, they will be more important later on for the Operation Anchorage DLC. I like all the lore behind this. It's a human experience to work for an entity, but then it starts conflicting with your morals. Trust me, I've been there. So it's not beyond belief that a charismatic leader of the Brotherhood, far away from any of the other elders that could challenge him, would seize an opportunity to do what he thought was right. And it's just as understandable that there would be a sub-faction that would see this as treason and refuse to go along with it and make their own group. There are more factions than this in the base game, but these are the most prominent ones. The other settlements of the capital Wasteland are unique, and each one sometimes offers a larger subquest. Arafu is north of Megaton, and is such a small settlement it doesn't even require a loading zone. I like this usage of the town being on an overpass because there are tons of ruined overpasses, and I think it makes sense people would live on top of them. You help the inhabitants of Arafu track down the family, who are cannibals that have been harassing and even killing members of Arafu. You can help them reform to cooperate with the rest of society, or kill them. They're deep in the Metro ruins, and may be the player's first instance of interacting with a Metro. I love Fallout 3's Metro areas, and I think it's one of the more unique things about this entry to the other ones. Other Fallout games have Metro systems, but I think Fallout 3 really wanted to showcase them due to their extensive usage in the DC area. They even look like the real DC Metro system because I've used them before when I visited years ago. They kind of feel like this game's version of a classic dungeon from an RPG. There isn't much puzzle solving in this game in general, but I mean the atmosphere. It's dark, dingy, full of rubble, and full of enemies. You can get lost in them too, which is something I like on a masochistic level. I hate getting lost and running low on supplies, but it doesn't take long to recognize that I do enjoy gameplay that does that to me. Then when you finally re-emerge from the Metro tunnels, you get this huge sigh of relief. It's awesome. Tenpenny Tower is on the southwestern part of the map. This portion of the map is pretty barren. Wide open fields and a couple of points of interest. The tower is full of the most wealthy people in the wasteland, and they're all stuck-up brats. It's owned by Mr. Tenpenny himself. He and his residents don't take too kindly to poor people, which is what the mission for Tenpenny Tower involves. A ghoul group, led by Roy Phillips, wants to be able to live in the tower as they think it's unfair that they can't even pay to live with the residents. You can handle this in many different ways. Help Tenpenny eliminate them, help the ghouls take over peacefully, or through violence. My dilemma with this quest is a total personal issue. I do want the ghouls to be able to live with the residents, but I also know that over time the ghouls will eventually kill the residents regardless. And that's bad because Tenpenny Tower has multiple merchants willing to buy and sell you things. So I often skip this mission, to be honest. The other big quest for the tower is, of course, blowing up Megaton. Tenpenny wants to blow it up for no other reason than it looks like an eyesore from his balcony. The northern area of the map is full of great side missions, but just as a general overview, it's an absolutely brutal area. There are roaming super mutants infesting the hillsides, and they even have a few encampments where you can see grotesque and mutilated flesh bags. You also have your typical raiders and Talon Company jerks. And there are so many of these factions and enemies up here that they are often found fighting each other before they even start attacking you. There's also the terrifying town of Old Olney, occupied by nothing but Deathclaws. Oasis is a hidden grotto in a rocky canyon area hidden away from the rest of society. It's one of the only places in the game that has lush green trees as soon as you walk in, and it kind of looks like Oblivion for a bit. Inside the lush grotto are a society of tree minders. Treefather Birch is the one guiding you through the grotto because he has requested to see us. Who is he? Well, we can find out, but we have to have a drink of psychedelic sap for a purification ceremony. After the trippy ceremony, we meet him, the tree. This is Harold and Bob. Bob is the tree, and Harold is the FEV-infected mutant Bob has grown around. Harold is a recurring character from Fallout 1 and 2. Originally infected by the FEV back in Fallout 1, Harold has wandered the waste with this growth on him for a long time. This is beyond my knowledge, admittedly, and it would be really cool to go back and play Fallout 1 and 2 if you guys would ever like to see that. He's been rooted in this spot for over 2 decades, with weird cultists worshipping him, and the tree itself separating all of his organs throughout this cavern. Harold needs you to go down into the caverns where his heart is and destroy it so he can be free from the tree. Before you enter the cave though, you see Birch and his wife arguing about what the Great Tree really wants and what they should do based on this interpretation. They misinterpret what Harold wants, but they make valid arguments for him to continue living. Treefather Birch wants you to lather up the heart with tree sap because it will stop Harold's growth. This would stop the spread of the Oasis to keep their tree-hugging society secret from the Wasteland. She sees Harold and his growth as a gift of life to the rest of the Wasteland and wants to see the Oasis spread. I like this dilemma. Harold is basically an enslaved chrysalis to Bob the Tree and just wants it all to end. Birch wants to keep everybody in the Oasis safe and protect the only green in the entire Wasteland from danger. And his wife wants to see the Oasis spread because she sees it as a gift that could rejuvenate the Wasteland. None of these options feel clear-cut to me, and I like that a lot. It's how real life feels. Sometimes you feel like even though you do the right thing, something bad might happen as a side effect. Harold's heart is deep in the cavern, infested by mirelurks. I hate the king mirelurks. I don't know what it is about them, but they're so creepy. When you arrive at Harold's heart, you can decide the outcome. I choose to destroy his heart, and I'm gifted the Barkskin perk, a permanent 5% increase to my damage resistance. Paradise Falls. Don't let the friendly ice cream boy thing fool you. Paradise Falls is anything but paradise. It's a slaver city.
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be cautious.
That's right, slavery is a thing in Fallout, and I like that it is. No, not like that. I'm not glad slavery exists in general. But I do think that this is an entirely plausible thing to happen in a world like this, and I appreciate that they didn't shy away from depicting a brutal reality of a collapsed society. That at the end of the day, human nature to be brutal to one another would hold true. If you're playing an evil karma character, you can come here and do several missions which involve enslaving people of the Wasteland and bringing them back here. As far as good karma, you can free the slaves inside. Now, I wanted to get footage of Paradise Falls as it normally functions because you can gain access without hostilities breaking out, but for me, the guard up at the front gate had a bit of a political disagreement with me, and it turned into a liberation campaign. It is defended by an army of slavers with crazy armor and weapons. They're led by Eulogy Jones and his pad. There are several ways to do this that don't involve combat, but ultimately you can free the slaves of Paradise Falls as well. Okay, that's a lot of death, destruction, and slavery. We need some lighthearted missions to even things out. Far to the northeast of the map is the Republic of Dave. It's a settlement that's been around for 200 years and has gone through pretty much every form of government at one time or another. The Republic of Dave's citizens are mostly his family, Dave's 2 wives, his kids, Bob, and of course Dave, the President of the Republic. Election Day is a quest where you get to decide the outcome of a coming election for the presidency of the Republic. Of course, the entire election is a scam where Dave rigs the election in his favor, but that's where we come in. You can manipulate the manipulated election and actually have Dave lose. I usually do that because it's hilarious, and Dave will throw a huge tantrum and start a new republic at Old Olney.
I guess you're wondering where I'm going. I'm off to annex Old Olney and forge the new Republic of Dave. Don't try to stop me.
That's right, the Deathclaw ran town. He will go there and quickly die. But if you go there and clear it out first, he will actually establish the new republic, and he's not exactly excited to see you. Canterbury Commons is subject to the most wacky side quest there is in the base game. It's been the battleground between 2 costumed kooks, the Ant Agonizer and her loyal hive of ants, and the Mechanist with his army of robots. It's a classic villain versus hero story. However, they're doing this on the streets of the Commons, and it's scaring everyone because they are really fighting each other. There are a multitude of ways to handle these two. You can side with one and kill the other, convince both of them to leave, kill both of them, or convince both of them to leave and give up their costumes. In my run for the video, I convinced the Antagonizer to leave, and I told the Mechanist deep in his forge that I had gotten rid of the Menace. Then he decided to go find other crime to fight in the Wasteland. The election day at the Republic of Dave and this quest really lean into Fallout's more wacky side, and it depends on how serious you want this setting to be if you're going to enjoy that or not. The series has always leaned on humor and sarcasm, so this is actually nothing new for the series at this point. I think when you're fighting slavers and deathclaws, it's okay to participate in a pointless election or fight cosplayers on the street. We've covered several, but definitely not all of the settlements and the side quests outside of DC in the main story. But before proceeding to the main story, there is another type of location I'm really excited to talk about. Vaults. There isn't just Vault 101. Several vaults dot the landscape and even involve the main story too. I get so excited when I find vaults. When you see that big vault door and you have absolutely no idea what's going to be inside. When I first played this game, I didn't even realize there were other vaults in the game. I thought 101 was it. And yes, I know Vault 101 has a numerical name. But if this was your first Fallout game, there aren't many other vaults close to Vault 101, so I didn't know. When I happen upon a new vault, I'm just filled with questions. Who lived here? What went wrong? Did the inhabitants flee or get killed? If they left, whatever happened to them? And the biggest question of all, what was the vault's purpose? On the surface, it appears vaults made by Vault-Tec are meant to shelter the citizens of the country from a nuclear apocalypse until it's safe to return to the surface. But as you play more of this game, and more of the Fallout games in general, you realize Vault-Tec was up to no good. Most vaults weren't actually created with the explicit purpose to protect people. They were made so that Vault-Tec, in collaboration with the government, could do experiments. Vault 106 is a big psychedelic drug test. Only 10 days after this vault closed, the hidden administrators started pumping gas into it. Vault 108 was for cloning and experimenting with power struggles against equals. It created an army of clones named Gary. Your own vault of 101 was supposed to be the vault that never opened. Well, we see how well that went. You can even go back to Vault 101 eventually to see what happened in the aftermath of you leaving. It's really sad, but I didn't know about this back in the day. It wasn't until years later somebody told me you could go back to Vault 101. This added mystery to vaults make them so exciting to discover and explore. First, you have that initial question of how people lived in them, but then what crazy experiment Vault-Tec was running and why is so intriguing. Now that I've played several of the side quests and explored the areas outside of the DC proper, I now want to start the main quest to find my father. After collecting information about your dad from various sources in Megaton, they point you in the direction of GNR Radio. GNR Radio is in the DC ruins. Now you may have noticed I've only talked about it in reference but not in detail. That's because I wanted to save it until now, similar to how I play this game. I see DC as the end game, and I only start doing missions and scavenging inside it when I'm ready to start finishing up the game. The reason for that is because DC is an absolutely brutal war zone. Close quarters, street to street fighting, exploding cars, it's just unhinged chaos constantly. It's like the fall of Berlin when the Soviet soldiers are about to finish up the war in Europe. A beautiful city turned into rubble and a bunch of people fighting to the bitter end. And everybody is here to play. Raiders, the Talon Company, ghouls, super mutants, and the Brotherhood of Steel trying desperately to fight them all off. The DC ruins are my favorite part of this game. It's a wild contrast to the suburbs and open fields if you were mainly exploring the areas around Megaton prior to entering the ruins. You go from open areas to this close quarters chaos and I love it. On the way to find the GNR HQ, you'll end up encountering the Brotherhood of Steel. Again, if you play like me and you save DC until the end, this may be your introduction to them. This squad was in the middle of an ambush that we apparently messed up. They're known as the Lion's Pride, after Elder Lyons, and it's led by his daughter, Sarah Lyons. They agree to let you follow them because they're also heading to the GNR building, as it's one of their important outposts for Brotherhood influence with the radio network. The fight to get to the GNR building is interesting because it's a mix of scripted and real combat. Getting to fight alongside a squad of power-armored group of Brotherhood members is badass. You fight to clear the building across from GNR. After you clear the courtyard, the fight is finally over. But wait, what's that sound? It's a super mutant behemoth, crashing through the bus blocking off a road and wielding a fire hydrant as a weapon to attack us. Since it doesn't have ranged abilities, you can hang out behind sandbags and just take pot shots at it. I lost my mind as a teenager when I fought this thing, and I still think it's a fun sequence. There's also a Fat Man you could pick up too. It launches mini nukes and will make you feel deeply regretful if you weren't taking big guns as a skill. After defeating the behemoth, you can finally enter GNR Radio. This is where you meet the famous personality you've been hearing on the radio.
I am Three Dog, jockey of discs and teller of truths.
The reason Three Dog knows where your dad is at is because your dad had heard about Three Dog on the radio and thought he could help James on his mission. So Three Dog knows where your dad is, but he's not just going to help you for nothing. He wants you to collect an old dish from a museum and affix it to the Washington Monument so that the radio signal from GNR can be picked up much clearer and further than before. You may have noticed its weak signal or seen G.O.A.T complaining about it back in Megaton. Getting to the monument itself won't be easy. It's an area called the Mall. It's basically turned into a World War I trench warfare pit crawling with super mutants. I do not recommend fighting here until you're armed to the teeth because there is an entire army of mutants and they will converge on you quick. In addition to the Washington Monument, you can also see the House of Congress building on the other end of the mall. And of course, all the museums lining the sides of the huge courtyard. The Museum of History is home to the Underworld, a city specifically for ghouls. And look, they have a mammoth! I love mammoths, elephants, and mastodons. They're so cool. Seeing these monuments is another thing I loved about this game. I grew up in Washington State, and whenever people from Washington leave the state, I'm sure my fellow Washingtonians have had to say, no, not that one, the one that's a whole state on the West Coast, or something like that. Being a poor kid from the West Coast, I had never seen my nation's capital at the time. This game was my only way to see these iconic places. Now, are they a bit roughed up? Sure, but hey, it's something. Around 2022, I did eventually go to the nation's capital, and I got to see all these amazing places, and I kept thinking, I saw this in Fallout 3 the whole time. In the Museum of Technology, we can find the antenna. It's swarming with, you guessed it, super mutants. Once you carefully dispatch them, you can look at all the museum's history. I already like history, so it's nice seeing the Wright brothers plane, but there's also Fallout history here too. Since the Fallout world takes place in an alternate timeline and was technically older than the real world America, there is some new history for people to discover here too. Like the invention of the Rob Co stealth boy. To proceed, you have to go through a tour of the Vault Tech vaults. It showcases what life would be like if and when you have to go into a vault for safety. This whole tour really tries appealing to mothers too by claiming their jobs will be made super easy by having auto vacuum systems and a spacey kitchen.
Moms will love how our Culinator 3000 kitchen system makes cooking a breeze.
And in the state this vault tour is in, with everything rusted over and literal blood smears on the walls, it actually acts like a funny metaphor for what a real vault experience would be like for most vault dwellers. When you find the lunar lander, you can take the dish from it and return it to the monument. The monument itself has an elevator, so you can put the dish on top of it. And when you place it, the signal of GNR will now spread far and wide, crystal clear. When you get back to GNR Radio HQ, 3Dog will finally tell you about your dad. He mentions that your dad talked about Project Purity, and said he was going all the way to Rivet City to speak to someone called Dr. Lee. Rivet City. A settlement built inside a beached aircraft carrier. It's an imposing sight to see. Since real aircraft carriers are pretty much floating cities that can carry nearly 6,000 people, this is a logical place to have a settlement. To cross over, there's even a huge bridge they have to extend out for you. It really is like a castle. And this all makes sense. This is the southern portion of the DC ruins, so you know there are tons of super mutants and raiders wandering around. Inside of Rivet City is a full marketplace with several vendors. A hotel for weary travelers. You can go to the flight deck and see all the old planes that are still there. There's also a lab where Dr. Lee can be found. As you enter the lab, you encounter someone named Dr. Zimmer. He is from the Commonwealth, and he's looking for an android from the Institute. These are references to Fallout 4, which takes place in the Boston area called the Commonwealth and involves a shadowy organization involved in androids called the Institute. I don't want to get into all that for this video, but as far as this game, I do love the foreshadowing. There are actually references to many areas of the world in this game, and I only realized these were connections to Fallout 4 after it came out. It's pretty cool to see this in hindsight. When you meet Dr. Lee, she reveals a ton of information to you. For starters, she recognizes us because we were in fact born in Rivet City, not the Vault. James took us to the Vault for safety, and Dr. Lee scolds us for leaving. Well, I'm sorry that I woke up to a bunch of security guards trying to kill me. Dr. Lee also reveals that Project Purity is the pursuit of cleansing the water of the capital Wasteland from radiation and making it available to everyone for free. She says both of our parents were part of the original project at Jefferson Memorial until she passed away during childbirth. After that, everything fell apart and James took us to the Vault. James was last known to have gone to the Jefferson Memorial to restart the project again, so that's where we're going. The memorial is just down the way from Rivet City. The outside is swarmed with super mutants and their centaur pets, so you can imagine what's going to be waiting for us inside. A holotape inside left by James indicates he went to Vault 112. Far to the western end of the Wasteland is Smith Casey's garage. Hidden below the garage is Vault 112. This vault is all about virtual reality. Entering one of these pods will take you to the Matrix-like simulation. After a robo-brain gives you a uniform, you must enter the pod that plugs you in to Tranquility Lane. It's your typical American suburban neighborhood with friendly folk and even a dog named Doc. That's so cute. Betty seems to be in charge around here and orders you to bully people to make her happy. At the time, Tranquility Lane was my first glimpse at what pre-war could have potentially looked like in the series. It is still a simulation and everyone here is in fear of Betty, but still it's nice seeing cars and houses that aren't destroyed. In order to break free from the simulation, you have to find the secret back door to the system by figuring out the code. You tap different objects that play out an audible chime, resetting if the sequence is wrong. Once you figure it out, a mainframe will appear where you can learn pretty much anything you want about Tranquility Lane. You need to initiate the Chinese invasion script to essentially ruin the simulation and create a door back to reality. When the Chinese simulation starts, it's brutal. They hunt down the entire neighborhood, killing everyone. I know not everybody loves it, but I don't mind Tranquility Lane. I get to see a not destroyed neighborhood, and I even get to see Chinese soldiers, of which America was terrified of before the bombs dropped. After the Chinese troops cut down most of Tranquility Lane, you could talk to Betty. She reveals that she is Dr. Stanislaw Braun, a Vault Tech programmer who created the simulation and has been tinkering with it for over 200 years. The other pods are basically trapped people who are forced to participate in the simulation. He also reveals that the dog we saw earlier was our dad James. When you leave Tranquility Lane, you finally get to meet back up with your dad. He thanks us, but he's not really interested in reconnecting, he just wants to get back to Project Purity. I remember being so pissed during this because I was like, hold on, I have so many damn questions, and he's like, oh, I gotta get back to work. James will answer a few of those questions, but he's eager to get back to Project Purity. You return back to the lab in Rivet City and escort the group of scientists to the Jefferson Memorial. Your dad sends you on a quest to help him restore some of the facility functions. And I don't know why this bothers me as much as it does, but he sends you down there once to flip the switch, then tells you to come back to get fuses. It's just, why? Just give me the fuses the first time. The basement of the memorial is already confusing as it is without having to navigate it twice for no reason. After the ridiculous fuse mission, you're told to clear the pipes. But right when you do that, a squad of vertebrates come swarming in on the facility. That's right, the shadowy group that only existed through the radio broadcast apparently did exist. You fight your way back up through the rotunda against power-armored Enclave soldiers, and their body armor looks badass. Colonel Autumn is in the rotunda with your father. He demands that James hand over control of the facility to him and even kills a woman to show James how serious he is. In a noble move, James kills everyone in the room by letting radiation pour in. Wait, what? We just got him back and our dad's already dead? This also happened so much quicker than I remember. This is really disappointing because you spend a good part of the story missions just trying to track the guy down. And then he doesn't even want to talk to you much because he wants to get back to do this research and boom, he's dead. Well, I guess it's just me now. Dr. Lee and the other team members are still alive, but they need help being transported to safety via the escape route. The escape route is a sewer system crawling with feral ghouls and Enclave soldiers. You fight your way through waves of both types of enemies trying to get the group to safety. On the other end of the escape tunnel, you emerge in front of the Citadel. The former Pentagon is now the headquarters of the Brotherhood of Steel. The Pentagon was the administrative capital of the United States military. A pretty logical location for the heavily militaristic Brotherhood of Steel. We're given entry after Dr. Lee demands entry because she knows someone inside. It's Elder Lyons, leader of the Capital Wasteland branch of the Brotherhood of Steel. He welcomes the survivors of Project Purity to stay at the Citadel. Dr. Lee tells him everything about what happened and convinces Lyons that they could possibly still get the water purifiers running again. The courtyard of this place is really cool. There are several members of the Brotherhood training in weapons and physical combat. Inside the halls themselves, there is a lot to see and a lot of people to talk to. This is where you get to see that the Brotherhood isn't just a bunch of power-armored soldiers. There are also scribes who actually preserve and research the technology collected from the Wasteland. The scribes also act a bit like historians too and can teach you many things about themselves, the outcasts, the Enclave, and many other things. There's a full armory, various NPCs that give out side missions. Oh, and then there's this massive robot, Liberty Prime, a currently non-functioning Titan robot. And of course, Elder Lyons will explain more about what the Brotherhood is all about. Lyons will even admit that he broke off from the Elders back out west and that he's grown attached to the local populace. His expedition has been here for 20 years fighting off the super mutant hordes, and he doesn't even know where they're coming from or why they're doing what they're doing in DC. All they've been able to do in 20 years is merely contain the threat. What I think Bethesda did really well with their depiction of the Brotherhood is the desperation that they're in. All the NPCs in the game that talk about the Brotherhood speak about how brutal the fighting is and how low on supplies and manning the Brotherhood is. Then you get to the DC ruins and see it for yourself. It's small squads of Brotherhood members fighting tons of super mutants. GNR is only guarded by a few soldiers, same thing with the Washington Monument. It makes me feel like my contribution to the mission will actually make a difference because they need all the help they can get. On top of all this fighting, you also have the Brotherhood outcasts who left the group a year prior, further reducing their manning. I don't just hear the hard times the Brotherhood is in, but by this point I fight alongside them and see it for myself. Elsewhere in the halls you can run into Squire Maxon, the future leader of this branch of the Brotherhood of Steel in Fallout 4. Another cool foreshadowing moment. I guess Bethesda really had an outline for Fallout 4 way back when they made this one. In the Citadel you can finally get power armor training too. Paladin Gunny will train you in how to wear any power armor in the game. When ready to move the story forward, Scribe Rothschild will give us access to a pre-war Vault-Tec computer that has records to find a G.E.C.K. On this computer, you can find that a G.E.C.K was sent to Vault 87. Vault 87 can be accessed through the tunnels of Little Lamplight far to the west. On my way there, I took some power armor from dead Outcast members. I didn't kill them, they died from this truck exploding. When I get to Little Lamplight, I'm greeted by McCready.
Hold it right there, mister! Don't take another step, or we'll blow your fucking head off.
Well damn, kid! McCready is the mayor of Little Lamplight. I had saved some kids from Paradise Falls earlier in the video if you remember my rampage. That good deed made me okay in McCready's book and he gives me access into the town. A whole town occupied by children. Yeah, don't ask me how that works, how they survive, how they get new kids, and no mungos, adults, are allowed. Just as soon as you walk in, there is someone actually aging out and being forced to leave on their birthday. That's how seriously the rules are taken about age. The Great Chamber is where most of the kids live. They even have a few vendors and quests to give out. Although this place is pretty secluded from the Wasteland, likely why it hasn't been overran by raiders yet, which I still find hard to believe, it also has Vault 87, which is full of monsters, so the kids say. After convincing McCready to let me go in, he will open the way to Murder Pass. I'm sure nothing bad could happen down Murder Pass. Immediately as you enter the next cavern, it's swarming with super mutants, which is actually uncommon for this area of the map. Most super mutants occupy the northern area of the map and of course the DC ruins. Vault 87 is on the western part of the map and contains an army of them. As you fight through the horde inside the vault, you access the computer terminal that explains why. Vault 87 was experimenting with the FEV. Over time, the test subject mutants broke from their confinement and took over the vault, creating an East Coast variant of super mutants. This is where all of them are coming from in the capital Wasteland. Throughout the game, you may see mutants taken captives. They bring them back to the vault and turn them into one of their own. Deeper in the vault, there is one experiment that failed, but in a different way. This is Fox. He's lived in confinement his whole life. His room contained a terminal connected to the vault mainframe, where he has been able to learn pretty much anything he wanted to about the world. And the super mutants kept Fox as a kind of curiosity, like a pet. The other super mutants have no idea why he hasn't become more like them. Fox has a deal with us. If we let him loose, he'll get us the G.E.C.K. The reason we need him is because the chamber that holds the G.E.C.K has tons of radiation and will die trying to get it. Fox will now act as a companion for the mission with his mighty super sledge. It feels really cool having a super mutant fight with me for once. Fox will lead us to the chamber and grab the G.E.C.K. We finally have the G.E.C.K. We can help finish Project Purity. But before we leave...
Good work, soldier.
Oh, come on, the damn Enclave. We wake up in the secret Enclave HQ at Raven Rock. Colonel Autumn greets us. He apparently survived the assassination attempt at Project Purity by having a secretive injection apparently. Seems a bit convenient for me. We tell Autumn to go F himself, and just when he's about to punish us, President Eden interrupts.
Colonel, I have need of you.
Mr. President, I have no time for other matters. I'll be with you shortly.
Now, Colonel.
Yes, sir.
Yep, the President Eden from all the radio broadcasts. He tells Autumn to leave and then tells us to go up to speak with him, even giving us all of our equipment back. We can now wander the halls of Raven Rock. While exploring though, a strange incident starts to unfold. Colonel Autumn and President Eden have a civil war right in front of us. The President asks me to see him, and Autumn then tells the compound to kill us. Well, so much for sightseeing. You now fight the entire compound of Enclave soldiers. I took this opportunity to take their badass armor because my outcast armor had been torn to shreds, and I could easily repair my own armor from taking theirs. In one of the chambers, I find Anna Holt. She was a member of Project Purity and left with the Enclave after the disaster at the memorial. Anna not only told the Enclave everything they wanted to know, but is actively helping their research because she's so impressed by their technology. I take her ass out and gladly take the negative karma. There's also an energy weapon bobblehead, and you have to take it now because you can't come back here. As you carve your way through the Enclave forces, you make your way to the main control room, the President's chamber. But it's filled with computers. It looks like a data center. As you climb the steps, you meet the president. That's right, the president is a computer. Look, maybe I was naive, but this was an amazing reveal for me back in the day. I thought this was so damn cool. And most of the Enclave didn't even know he was a computer either, because only Colonel Autumn was allowed into the chamber. The president wants us to inject an FEV variant into Project Purity to rid the Wasteland of super mutants. However, the reason why the president and Autumn had a power struggle was because Autumn knew there was something more sinister behind it and revolted against the president. This FEV variant will basically kill anyone even slightly mutated, not just super mutants. He doesn't even guarantee we won't die from it. He says we will likely live because we were raised in the vault. Yeah, I'm not doing that. There are various ways to deal with President Eden. You can even convince him to self-destruct. Unfortunately, I did not pass the speech check, so I have to take the vial from him in order to leave the chamber. As you leave the base, it's erupting and fighting between Autumn's soldiers and the President's robots. Outside, you see good old Fox mowing down some Enclave soldiers with this new Gatling laser. This guy came all the way here to save us. If you have good karma, he will join you as a companion. I haven't used a companion all game, but how could I resist? Although I'm sure this will be extremely awkward when I'm interacting with the Brotherhood of Steel with Fox with me. Once I have Fox with me, I return back to the Citadel. With the Enclave having stolen the G.E.C.K from me, they are going to install whatever variant they want into the Purifier. That is too dangerous for the Brotherhood, and Elder Lyons decides to strike the facility immediately. This is also where you can either hide or hand over the FEV variant from President Eden. Sentinel Lyons will also make you an honorary member of the Pride and offer you power armor or recon armor. I like that there's a choice in that because at this point I'm playing more of an agile stealthy character, so the power armor that subtracts my agility wasn't a great fit. Lyons then calls for the attack on the Purifier facility. There is no turning back from here. We're striking the facility and we aren't alone. The robot is coming with us. Liberty Prime. The battle has begun and it's absolute madness. There is an artillery barrage being thrown at you. Enclave vertebrates come swarming in trying to take out Liberty Prime. He isn't defenseless though. The whole time he's slaughtering the Enclave soldiers, he's decrying the vile communists and promising to avenge Anchorage, Alaska. I know this set piece may not be for everybody, but it's a guilty pleasure of mine. But it's also known for its bugs, like this. At first I was like, hold on, it had a jetpack? I don't remember that. Luckily the communist red magic didn't work on our boy Liberty and he figures it out. The robot escorts us to the memorial and it's time to do the rest without him. We crash in with the Brotherhood and confront Colonel Autumn. It went quick. Very anticlimactic. The Purity Chamber has too much radiation to safely go in and activate it. It will take a noble sacrifice. In the base game, you can choose to sacrifice yourself or Sarah Lyons to enter the containment center and activate the console. An awful decision, but at least they corrected it later, I guess. With the Broken Steel DLC, it was turned into an open end, and you can choose Fox to go in too, which makes sense because he literally just did the same thing back at Vault 87, and he was fine. Then they gave me him as a companion. He will say something about my destiny belongs in there, and I don't know, man, I just watched you do this earlier with no issues. I don't know why it needs to be me. And that's the end of the game. Ron Perlman will narrate the ending. The scenes and dialogue will be based on your actions throughout the game. It was fine for the most part, but he gives me shit for not going in myself.
But the child refused to follow the father's selfless example. Instead, allowing a true hero to venture into the irradiated control chamber of Project Purity.
Why am I being shit on? I don't know why I need to die in this situation. This makes no sense to me. After the outro, it will start to get into DLC territory, but before that, I want to speak on the story as a whole. Overall, I'm left unimpressed by the story of Fallout 3. Immediately after we leave the vault, there is a nagging thought I have that I should be looking for my dad. But my impulse to play this game makes me reluctant. I want to explore this world. I want to do what I want. I'm not saying you can't have a story with stakes and family members in danger, but we're not watching a movie, we're playing a video game. And it's a role-playing video game at that. But when you assign my role as a savior of my father, it's kind of hard for someone like me to remove myself from that thought. I do like the story once we pick it up in DC, and getting to see all the chaos and destruction, interacting with the Brotherhood of Steel, and seeing the true dangers of the super mutants. I like seeing the Enclave facility and the reveal of President Eden, but it can only shock you once. I wish President Eden would have had more dialogue options too. He will tell you some unique things only he knows, but it's only a few lines. The Liberty Prime sequence is definitely subjective. I happen to like it, but I can see others thinking that it's way over the top. And it also has its bugs. Once you get into the chamber itself, it's pretty underwhelming. Colonel Autumn dies as quickly as a raider does. Then the self-sacrifice and what it initially meant in terms of gameplay implications feels disappointing. Even when you choose Fox, who is completely unharmed by radiation, the game scolds you for not needlessly sacrificing yourself. Overall, I don't like the story much, but it does have a few moments I enjoy. With the main story wrapped up, it's time for the DLCs. With the Broken Steel DLC, the game will continue after the outro. You'll wake up back in the Citadel with the Brotherhood. You and pretty much everybody else survives. I guess that makes me a piece of shit like Ron Perlman says though. Elder Lyons explains that the water of the Wasteland will now begin to be purified, and the Enclave pockets of resistance are being eradicated. Then he declares you a Knight of the Brotherhood of Steel. And we aren't given a choice on that, by the way, he just decides you are one. This is confusing because I was fine being named an honorary member because it's just that, honorary. It's like when people get those honorary diplomas from colleges. You know, it's like not real. From here on out though, you can do whatever you want. Staying with the Brotherhood and following the quests they give you will go down the path to the Broken Steel DLC, where you get to help truly finish off the Enclave. But you can also leave and continue doing any other remaining quests in the Wasteland or do the other DLCs. I'll come back to the Broken Steel DLC later. All of the DLCs have a detour to a whole different area outside of the base game map. The Pit takes place in the remnants of Pittsburgh, and it cranks all of the horrifying aspects of post-war society up much higher than anything else in the base game. You may have interacted with NPCs mentioning the Pit, namely anyone involved in slavery and the Brotherhood of Steel who fought a desperate battle there. The Pit is a city ran by raider slavers. They force people to work in industrial buildings, scavenging for a raider faction led by a man named Asher. There is also a horrific disease that plagues the inhabitants of the Pit and turns them into savage and mindless trogs. You can't bring companions with you to these DLCs, which I totally understand, but it does suck because they're great for carrying items for you. And usually when you leave these DLCs, you have a bunch of new items. My favorite new item from the Pit is the Infiltrator. It's a scoped assault rifle that feels really accurate at short and medium distances and just looks badass. I really like the Pit for how brutal it turned out to be. Back in Paradise Falls, you just see slaves corralled in cages, which is of course sad, but that's all they're doing. In the Pit, they're doing slave things, being forced by their masters to continue their war machine. And in fact, at points, you have to work as a slave in disguise in order to infiltrate the raider gangs. Mothership Zeta is where you're abducted by aliens, and you really don't get a say in the matter. If you stumble across this alien ship, they just take you, whether you're ready or not. It's strange because every other DLC has a very clear warning before they start. Once on board the alien ship, you wake up to them poking and prodding you. These Zatan scum have been abducting and experimenting on humans for hundreds of years. I love the classic alien from the 50s look they and their technology has. It stays true to the Fallout games being inspired by the culture and depictions of the 50s. You basically do a huge riot to get off of the ship with prisoners from different areas and times of Earth. Yeah, you get to hang out with the samurai. Not much story on this one, but I don't think that was the point. This one is meant for you to roam and pillage an alien spacecraft. Operation Anchorage sees the player interacting with the Brotherhood outcast to enter a simulation, and basically beat a game in order to unlock an area within a compound they've accessed. You get to play in a simulated scenario of the operation to retake Anchorage, Alaska from the damn red Chinese. It's very much built like a video game. You don't take any of your own weapons, you click on refilling stations for your health and ammo, the enemies fizzle away when defeated. What I like about Operation Anchorage is more pre-war depictions, which I'm a sucker for. The landscape is entirely different than anything else in the game. High up in the mountains with lots of whites and blue rather than browns and grays from back at the capital Wasteland. You also get access to pre-war weapons like the G.E.C.K rifle. What I don't like about the DLC is that depending on your character, it doesn't feel like it's made for you. The opening has you being given a silenced pistol and traveling across a mountain valley to reach the next area. It really wants you to play stealthily. Of course, you don't have to play it stealthy, but then when you get swarmed in all directions by a hail of gunfire from defendable positions, it kind of feels like you were supposed to. And like Mothership Zeta, you can't go back and forth while you're in the DLC, you have to finish it out. You see out the simulation by completing missions, making the job of defeating the Chinese easier, and then it culminates in a great assault to take out the Chinese. Point Lookout is probably my favorite DLC. You go to a big, dirty bog with hillbillies and tons of secrets like side quests involving a Chinese spy. It's a creepy setting involving rituals and even acid trip using your own memories to torment you. And of course, we can't forget about the hillbillies. What I especially like about Point Lookout is that you can go back and forth between this DLC and the mainland. Back with the Brotherhood of Steel, their DLC missions involve the mopping up operation to finish off the Enclave. Liberty Prime makes his triumphant return, and while he kicks a lot of ass, he is ultimately taken out by an orbital strike. This is bad because that is extremely powerful technology that can keep the Enclave in the fight. Depending on your actions back at Raven Rock, they still may have access to a lot of technology. Yeah, they lost one battle back at Project Purity, but that doesn't mean the whole thing collapses, and that makes sense. They're the inheritors of the former United States government. They got more of a head start than any other faction in the game. It makes sense that they'd still have operational areas that could still give the Brotherhood a black eye. Broken Steel isn't just about the story aspects though. It's the DLC that also raised the level cap to level 30 and added a lot of perks too. Alright, those are the DLCs. I know that was a very quick overview, but it was either doing it that way and making a separate video that I can do more detail with, or making this video twice as long. I don't know how I will grow and develop as a YouTuber later, but for now I don't think I'm the big multi-hour retrospective guy yet. Overall, I like these DLCs, probably more than others. But my personal favorite thing about Fallout 3 is its depictions, exploration, and discovery. In all of the DLCs, you go to new areas where you've never been before. All of them have such a wide range of areas to go to. Broken Steel keeps you kind of in the region, which is fine because it still shows you the Enclave compounds you've never been to. But then you go to the mountains of Alaska, the bogs of Maryland, the horrifying city of the Pit, and then on a freaking alien spaceship. The DLCs are so good, I think that nobody should ever be playing just the base game. So what are my final thoughts on Fallout 3? I think it's an enjoyable but messy game. Bethesda was trying to make a Fallout game under the same or at least similar philosophy for their Elder Scrolls games, but the results could be clunky. The combat leaves much to be desired with it trying to balance the RPG elements of dice rolls with the first-person shooter aspects. Enemies turning into sponges is probably a tired talking point you've heard many times depending on how many Fallout 3 videos you've watched, but just because it's said a million times doesn't make it not true. When leveling up your character, there are certain styles you can play in, like Stealthy Sniper or even a Pyromaniac, but it's a very small selection in terms of diversifying your playstyle. This would definitely get corrected more in Obsidian's New Vegas, and even when Bethesda was back in the driver's seat with Fallout 4. The story is also something I take issue with. I don't understand how the same company makes Morrowind, which leans into the RPG aspects of gameplay so much that it will literally tell you to just explore and do your own thing and come back when you're ready, to then give you the same freedom as far as gameplay but not as far as role-playing. It feels like ever since Oblivion, Bethesda wants to write movies, not video games. They have these stories that seem pretty interesting on paper, but for a video game they're really clunky. Or at least they're timed inappropriately to the gameplay. I'm not saying you have to make boring stories and avoid set pieces, but at the end of the day, Bethesda makes RPGs where they want the player to enjoy freedom. Okay, so what do I love about Fallout 3? If I've been so critical, then what keeps me coming back and will continue bringing me back in the future? It's the world Bethesda built. Not that they came up with the foundations of Fallout, but I love their depiction of it. Exploring the capital Wasteland is fun and interesting. There are memorable side quests, contrasting areas and environments. I absolutely love the DC ruins and the metro systems personally. There is and will always likely be a pulling for me to return, and to try to find more tiny secrets I never knew about. And this game meant a lot to me during a hard time too. In 2011, just a few years after this game came out, I was in Navy boot camp. There was a lot of downtime where we had to hurry up and wait or clean the same objects over and over again to build discipline or something. The thing me and my shipmates used to talk about to pass the time by was Fallout 3. For some reason, that was a game most of us had played, and we talk about it for hours. We were all trading different secrets about the game that some of us didn't know about. While Fallout 3 isn't a perfect game, if it's able to do that, I think it's pretty special. Folks, that's all I've got for Fallout 3. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. This video was brought to you by my channel members and patrons. My Patreon is entirely free to everyone, so check that out for early content or to see what I'm up to for the channel next. If you do become a paid member, you help me sustain the process of making content full time, and I'll shout you out in my videos. Thank you to my YouTube channel members, Quinn, Chris Redbeard, Brewham, Eugenia, and Johnny C. And to my patrons, Shio, Lyra, Eon Kane, Martane, Smudge, Brooks, Jonathan C., J-Rat, and Andrew PH. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Remember what to do, friends. Now tell me right out loud. What are you supposed to do when you see the Flash? Duck and cover. Duck